Think about the moment you come home at the end of a long, exhausting day.
Right.
You step inside, you shut the front door behind you, and you just turn that deadbolt. Click.
Best feeling in the world.
Exactly. I want you to really picture that exact second. You probably, let out a breath you didn't even realize you were holding, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Your shoulders drop, the tension just sort of melts away because that instant wave of relief washes over you. Since you are finally home, you're alone, and, you're safe.
Or so you think.
Right. But what if that feeling of absolute security is just completely misplaced?
It really is the ultimate human illusion, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we put up a layer of drywall, some glass, maybe like a few pieces of metal in the door frame, and our brains instantly convince us that we've magically walled off all the chaos and danger of the outside world.
We really do. And today, we're going to systematically dismantle that illusion.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, welcome to this deep dive. Today's mission is taking us into some truly unsettling primal territory. We are looking at 3 terrifying, documented, true accounts of being home alone.
Yeah.
And we've sourced these from transcripts of the YouTube channel, Mr. Nightmare.
And just to establish the ground rules here, our goal is not simply to, tell you scary stories around a digital campfire.
Right, there's a bigger purpose.
Exactly. We are using these 3 very specific accounts to unpack the underlying psychology of fear. We really want to examine exactly how our brains process threats in our supposedly safe spaces, and why the violation of the physical home strikes so deeply at our most ancient evolutionary anxieties.
Okay, let's unpack this with our first account. We are starting with a scenario that absolutely tests a person's baseline anxiety before anything even happens.
Setting the stage.
Yeah. Imagine you are moving into a new, totally unfamiliar house.
Yeah.
But it already has a really dark recent history attached to it.
Right. This is the account of the month-to-month rental.
Yes. So the narrator and her fiancé, Ryan, are hunting for a place, and they managed to secure an incredibly cheap rate on this rental house.
And there's always a reason it's cheap.
Always. Why? Because the previous owners, an elderly couple, just died there within weeks of each other.
Wow.
The husband had a massive fatal heart attack down in the unfinished basement. And shortly after that, the wife fell, hit her head on a glass end table, and left a massive dark blood stain right in the middle of the living room carpet.
Which is just an objectively horrific thing to walk into on moving day.
Seriously.
And right away, we have to pause and look at the actual neuroscience of environment priming here.
Because what's wild is that her fiancé, Ryan, is completely unfazed by it all.
Of course he is.
He's just thrilled about the cheap rent. He's literally walking around making ghost noises to mock her for being creeped out.
That's terrible.
Right. So why is she terrified while he's just, making jokes?
Well, that difference really comes down to how their respective brains are processing the environment. Think of environment priming like preloading software into your computer. When you move into a new space, your brain is working overtime to establish a baseline for what is normal.
Makes sense.
But knowing that 2 people recently suffered sudden deaths there, and physically seeing the biological evidence of a fatal injury right on the carpet that preloads the narrator's brain with threat software?
So she's hyper-aware.
Exactly. Her amygdala, which is the fear processing center of the brain, essentially lowers its threshold for what constitutes a danger.
I see. So an ordinary house noise suddenly gets flagged as a threat.
Precisely. Her brain is acting as a predictive engine. It's basically saying lethal violence happened here recently, therefore the probability of danger is high.
Yeah.
Ryan's brain, likely due to, a lack of empathy or just a high degree of cognitive dissonance, is actively rejecting that data. He's just focusing on the financial reward of the cheap rent.
But the narrator is primed.
She's primed. She is waiting for the threat.
And the terrifying thing is, the threats actually start materializing, and it doesn't start with her. It starts with their cattle dog, Rex.
Animals always know.
They really do. So one night, the fiancé is away on a bachelor party. The narrator is home alone. She hears a slight creak coming from the basement, which is the exact spot where the old man died.
Oh, no.
Suddenly, Rex runs to the basement door, plants his feet, and starts aggressively barking and growling. And the narrator notes this is a highly trained dog that, rarely ever barks.
That is a crucial escalation right there.
Right.
What's fascinating here is how humans historically use pets as our primal alarm systems.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, throughout human evolution, we've relied heavily on the superior sensory capabilities of animals to detect predators long before our own, dull senses could pick them up.
So the dog basically bypasses her whole internal debate about whether she's just being paranoid.
Exactly. The dog is the ultimate reality tester.
Wow.
When a highly intelligent herding breed breaks its normal behavioral pattern to just stare at a closed door and growl, it bypasses our human rationalization entirely.
Because the dog doesn't know about the old man.
Right. The dog isn't primed by the abstract knowledge of the death. The dog can't understand a lease agreement. The dog is reacting to an immediate, present kinetic stimulus in that environment. It validates her fear.
So the dog knows something is really wrong. And he spends the rest of the night standing guard at the absolute foot of her bed, just staring dead ahead at the bedroom door.
I would be so terrified.
But it gets so much worse. The physical evidence mounts. The next day, she goes into the laundry room, and the washing machine, this massive, incredibly heavy appliance, is sitting completely pulled out.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, several feet into the middle of the room. She has to physically struggle with all her weight just to push it back into place.
Now, the psychological landscape shifts entirely. We've moved from an ambiguous auditory threat, like a creak in the floorboards, to indisputable physical manipulation of her secure environment.
Yeah, machines don't walk.
A 150-pound washing machine does not simply migrate across a room on its own.
Right. And then we hit Saturday night. She's home alone again. It is 9:20 p.m. She hears what sounds like a loud explosion right outside.
Okay.
She checks her garage security camera. The heavy garage door has opened itself, and the video feed shows these bizarre flashes of light, like fireworks illuminating the driveway.
This is escalating so fast.
But when she physically works up the courage to look out the window, there is zero evidence of fireworks. No smoke, no debris, nothing.
The perimeter of her sanctuary is systematically failing.
It is practically horror movie bingo at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Every single red flag is waving right in her face. And then comes the absolute climax of the weekend.
I'm bracing myself.
It is 3:39 in the morning. She is woken up, not by a gentle tap, but by a continuous, violent, heavy banging on her front door.
At 3:39 a.m.
Yes. She stays frozen in bed.
Mm-hmm.
Then the home security system speaks.
Mm.
The automated voice announces loudly in the dark, front door open.
Oh, that specific automated voice is just the sound of the ultimate boundary failing.
It really is. She sprints to lock her bedroom door. Her phone mysteriously won't turn on it. It's just a dead black screen.
Of course it is.
And as she looks over, she can physically see the doorknob to her bedroom, violently shaking back and forth. Someone is actively trying to turn the handle.
That is true terror.
She screams at the top of her lungs. She finally manages to get a signal on her phone and gets the police on the line. The cops show up shortly after. They find the front door wide open, but they find absolutely no one inside.
And how do the authorities, the people actually trained to handle this, how do they process this terrifying violation of her space?
This is the part that makes me so angry on her behalf. They casually tell her the lights on the camera were probably just neighborhood kids playing with fireworks in the driveway.
Even with no debris.
Even though there's zero physical evidence of it. And as for the front door, the locked deadbolt, the cops tell her it must have been the wind.
The wind.
The wind. On a humid, still July night. Wait, I have to push back on this. The cops blamed the wind for a locked deadbolt physically unlatching and a heavy door blowing wide open.
It's absurd.
That is some Olympic-level denial. How does a victim even process that?
It goes way beyond denial. It is a textbook case of institutional gaslighting. Think about the mechanical breakdown of reality here.
What do you mean?
Well, as humans, our brains rely heavily on social consensus to confirm our reality. She has tangible physical evidence, a moved washing machine, video footage of inexplicable flashes, a door that was violently opened, and her own dog's panicked survival behavior.
So she knows what she experienced.
Yes, but when the authority figures, the police, whose entire societal role is to objectively protect citizens and validate threats, when they look at that same reality and dismiss it as just the wind, it causes profound cognitive dissonance.
That's basically saying she's crazy.
Exactly. It isolates the victim entirely. It sends a psychological message saying, not only are you completely unprotected from the predator, but your mind cannot be trusted.
That is so dark.
It really traps her inside her own fear because she can no longer trust the system meant to save her.
It's infuriating to even think about. But this makes me wonder, if our brain breaks down and feels isolated when the threat is invisible and denied by authorities, how does it react when the threat is undeniable, physically right in front of us, and just highly erratic?
That perfectly frames our next scenario. This is the account of the house next to the bar.
Exactly. So our protagonist here is an extreme introvert. He loves comic books. He loves his video games. He just deeply enjoys staying home alone.
A true homebody.
Yeah. He happens to live directly next to a noisy neighborhood bar, but he usually just puts on his headphones and ignores it. One Saturday night, his best friend Isla comes over to hang out. Around 10 p.m., she heads out.
Okay.
He walks her to her car, and as she drives away, he notices a group of girls lingering outside the bar. But one of them is separated from the pack.
That's always a red flag.
Right. She's a blonde woman looking completely disheveled, wearing a tattered, dirty pink dress. She locks eyes with him, waves aggressively, and then blows him an exaggerated kiss.
Let's pause and really look at the protagonist's psychological profile for a moment.
Yeah, let's do it.
For an extreme introvert, the home isn't just a physical shelter from the rain. It is a literal fortress of identity.
A fortress of identity. I like that.
It's the only environment where the immense cognitive load of navigating the unpredictable outside world is finally lifted.
So his home is where his brain gets to turn off his defensive shields.
Precisely. Introverts expend high amounts of energy managing external stimuli. The home is where they recharge. So a threat that zeroes in on that specific space is profoundly destabilizing because it attacks their only mechanism for recovery.
And that destabilization happens incredibly fast. At 1:30 a.m., he hears a sharp knock at his door. He looks out the people, sees no one. 15 minutes later, he looks out his window toward his driveway. He notices the interior dome light of his car is shining brightly in the dark, and the driver's side door is slightly ajar.
Oh, so someone is actively messing with his property.
Yes. He grabs his keys, goes outside, locks the car up, and comes back inside. And this is where the story gets so incredibly creepy.
I don't like the sound of this.
As soon as he shuts and locks his front door behind him, he smells something lingering inside his house. It's the heavy, unmistakable scent of lavender perfume.
Oh, wow. The inclusion of scent is such a powerful, terrifying narrative detail here. We really have to look at the actual neurobiology of the olfactory bulb.
How so?
Smell is the only one of our five senses that has a direct, unfiltered line to the limbic system. And that system houses the amygdala and the hippocampus, which are the exact regions of the brain responsible for raw emotion and memory.
Wait, let me push back on that for a second.
Shit.
If I'm in my house and I smell smoke, my logical brain still has to process the thought, oh, something is on fire. I should get water, right? Why does the smell of lavender trigger an immediate primal panic before he even rationally knows who is in the house?
That's a great question, and it really comes down to neural routing.
Neural routing.
Yeah, when you see or hear something, that sensory data goes to the thalamus first. Think of the thalamus like a switchboard operator that analyzes the data and sends it to the logical cortex for review. I see a flame. Flame means fire.
Okay, got it.
But smell bypasses the thalamus entirely. The olfactory bulb sends the lavender signal straight to the primitive alarm bell of the amygdala.
Wow.
So before his rational thinking brain can even construct the sentence, "A stranger is inside my house," his primitive survival brain has already flooded his bloodstream with adrenaline. The scent proves a physical invasion in a way that a fleeting shadow simply doesn't.
That makes total sense. It's like a twisted reverse Cinderella story.
It really is.
You have the girl in the tattered pink dress outside, and then this lingering invisible scent of lavender inside, leaving a trail. And then the auditory cues hit him. Standing in his hallway, he hears soft, distinctly feminine giggling.
No, thank you.
And then rapid, delicate footsteps running around inside his own living room.
Think about the psychological dissonance of that moment.
It's jarring.
Extremely jarring. Hearing the sound of joy, like giggling, inserted into a context of absolute terror is just completely unsettling. It signals to the victim that the intruder is completely comfortable. They are almost playing a game, reveling in the environment, while he is experiencing a massive physiological stress response.
He grabs a golf club and starts slowly clearing his house, room by room. He walks into the kitchen and he freezes.
Oh, man.
Standing right there, staring out his kitchen window with her back to him, is the woman in the tattered pink dress. And before he can even move a muscle, without even turning around to look at him, she says, "Hey, buddy, I know you're there."
That is chilling.
And she snaps her head around and charges straight at him.
That specific line of dialogue is an assertion of complete dominance in his territory. She isn't startled, she is dictating the terms of the engagement.
He panics, runs to the bathroom, barricades himself inside, and frantically dials the cops. She is on the other side, pounding on the door, begging him in his sickly sweet voice to open it.
Pure nightmare fuel.
When the police finally arrive with their sirens blaring, they find the back door wide open. She fled into the night. But they find something else.
What did they find?
Right outside the bathroom door, lying on the floor exactly where she was standing, she left a weapon. But it wasn't a weapon she brought with her. It was one of his own kitchen steak knives.
Oh, that single detail is chilling. That is the purest definition of psychological premeditation.
Because she didn't just walk in with it. She had to actively go through his kitchen drawers, locate the knives, choose one, and bring it to the bathroom door.
Exactly. Leaving his own knife at the door is a highly calculated message.
What's the message?
It says, I have freely explored your sanctuary. I know exactly where you keep your tools. I possess the ability to turn your own belongings into instruments of your destruction.
That is so messed up.
It is a statement of absolute territorial conquest. It transforms the one place where this introvert feels most powerful and secure into an environment where he is entirely powerless.
That is horrifying. But it raises a terrifying question. If we are terrified by an erratic stranger breaching our fortress from the outside, what happens to our mind when we realize the threat bypassed the walls entirely and was already living inside?
The enemy within. This brings us to the crawl space.
Yes. Our narrator for this final account is a highly successful, fiercely independent interior decorator. She is in her mid-30s, she works entirely from her home office, and she loves living alone.
Sounds idyllic.
She feels completely secure. But a few months after moving into her beautiful dream home, she starts hearing a strange noise right above her office ceiling. She describes it as a heavy shuffling sound, like someone slowly dragging a large cardboard box across the floorboards above her.
And how does she initially choose to process that incredibly suspicious sound?
She immediately tells herself it's just squirrels.
Of course she does.
She remembers squirrels getting into her parents' roof when she was a little kid, so she decides, yep, definitely just a family of fat squirrels in the walls.
Yeah.
She literally writes, call pest control on a to-do list.
Yeah.
And just goes back to work.
Incredible.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Why is our default human setting always to blame the house settling or the wind or animals? We hear heavy footsteps and say, oh, it's just a raccoon. Are we intentionally trying to trick ourselves?
Absolutely, yes. What you are describing is the powerful psychological defense mechanism of rationalization.
Like we're lying to ourselves to feel safe.
Sort of. Our brains are biologically designed to protect us from cognitive overload. Think of it like a computer's firewall.
How so?
For this woman, the actual reality of her situation, that a full-grown human being might be secretly living in the ceiling of her safe haven, is a truth too horrifying to process.
Yeah, that would break anyone.
If she fully accepted that, her system would crash. She would be completely paralyzed by fear. She wouldn't be able to work, sleep, or function on any level.
Right.
So her brain's firewall actively blocks out the virus, the terrifying truth, by desperately searching her memory banks for a plausible, non-threatening label. It finds the childhood squirrels, slaps that label on the threat to quarantine it, and allows her to keep functioning.
Gonna have to challenge that. A human dragging a heavy box sounds absolutely nothing like a squirrel. How does her brain actively ignore auditory proof that contradicts the squirrel theory?
Because the survival need for normalcy overrides objective reality. It's confirmation bias fueled by desperation.
Wow.
We need to believe the firewall is holding because the alternative completely destroys our reality.
But the alternative eventually forces its way through the firewall.
Wow.
One night, she is working late on a project. It's past 2:80 a.m. She hears the heavy shuffling again, but this time it's continuous. And worse,
Yeah.
she stops typing and hears unmistakable rhythmic breathing. And the terrifying part, she realizes the sound isn't over her office anymore. It has moved. It's coming from the crawl space directly above her bedroom.
The threat is actively tracking her movements through the house.
She grabs a chair, reaches up, pulls the string for the ceiling crawl space ladder, and climbs up a few steps. It's pitch black up there, just massive wooden cross beams and insulation.
I can't even imagine the anxiety.
She doesn't see anything, so she shuts it. But she's way too freaked out to sleep in her bed, so she takes a blanket out to the living room couch. She eventually dozes off, but is jolted awake by a loud creak down the hall.
Her firewall is officially broken now.
It's gone. She gets up and investigates. She walks slowly down the hallway. The pull string for the crawl space door is dangling down from the ceiling, and it is physically swaying back and forth like a pendulum.
The undeniable kinetic proof of recent movement, the firewall just collapsed.
She looks over at her bedroom door. She knows she left it wide open, but now it's almost completely shut. She pushes it open, creak. She flicks on the light switch. At first glance, nothing seems out of place.
But there's always something out of place.
But then she looks down at the carpet. Right next to her bed, there is a fresh, damp clump of dirt. She drops down to one knee to examine the dirt, and she hears the rhythmic breathing again. She slowly lowers her head and looks under her bed.
The ultimate universal childhood nightmare made tangibly real.
Lying there, crammed under her bed, staring directly into her eyes, is a filthy, middle-aged man.
Oh my God.
She screams in absolute terror and falls backward onto the floor. And the man doesn't scramble. He doesn't pull a weapon. He just stares blindly at her and says in a calm voice, "Hi, Julie, it's okay."
That is horrifying.
Over and over. "Hi, Julie, it's okay." She is utterly paralyzed. She finally manages to scramble to her feet, sprint out the front door of the house, get in her car, and drive to a brightly lit 24-hour diner to call the police.
This specific detail raises a crucial question about the very nature of this violation.
What do you mean?
We talked earlier about the unpredictable horror of a random intruder, like the woman outside the bar. But this is entirely different. This is a targeted, sustained attack.
Right, because when the police search the house, they find dozens of empty water bottles, food wrappers, and a makeshift pillow hidden behind a structural beam deep in the crawl space. He had been living up there for weeks.
Weeks, just watching her.
And the narrator realizes later that the man under the bed was actually an estranged, much older friend of her father's who had always been creepily obsessed with her from afar.
And the most chilling detail that confirms the absolute psychological devastation of this event is his dialogue. "Hi, Julie."
Yeah, using her name.
By using her first name, he completely destroys the anonymity of the attack.
It wasn't just a wrong place, wrong time break-in.
Exactly. It was a methodical, intimate violation of her very existence. He watched her. He listened to her phone calls. He learned her routines. He tracked her steps from above.
It's just so invasive.
When an intruder uses your name in the dark, they are signaling that they don't just want your belongings. They are claiming psychological ownership of you within your own sanctuary.
Wow. So as we step back, what does this all mean for us? When we look at all three of these sources together, what are we really looking at?
It's a lot to process.
We have a woman whose physical reality is gaslit and dismissed by the police as just the wind. We have an introvert whose sanctuary is invaded by a stranger who turns his own kitchen knife into a physical symbol of dominance. And we have a fiercely independent woman whose brain desperately rationalizes the sounds of a stalker living in her ceiling because the truth is simply too horrible to face.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals that our fundamental need for shelter isn't just physical. It's a deep, necessary psychological boundary.
Right.
We use the concept of home to keep the chaos, the violence, and the utter unpredictability of the world at bay. These three accounts systematically dismantle that comforting illusion.
They really do.
They show us that our fortress is incredibly fragile. The true horror in all of these stories isn't supernatural ghosts or monsters. It's the sudden, violent realization that in our most vulnerable, unguarded moments, when we are wearing our pajamas, when we are brushing our teeth, when we finally let our guard down, we are still entirely exposed to the world.
Exposed to the erratic people outside, and sometimes terrifyingly exposed to the people who have already found a quiet way inside.
Exactly.
I want you, the listener, to really reflect on your own habits tonight. Think about your nightly routines. Do you genuinely double-check your locks before you go to sleep? Or do you just assume they are thrown?
Most people just assume.
When you hear a heavy floorboard settle in the hallway, or a strange scratch at the wall, do you immediately write it off as just the wind, or just squirrels?
Yeah.
When was the very last time you actually got down on your knees and looked under your bed?
We put so much faith into the walls we build to keep ourselves safe. But we rarely, if ever, question the actual integrity of the walls themselves.
Exactly. Which leaves us with one final, deeply unsettling question to mull over tonight. When you step inside at the end of the day, when you shut that heavy door and turn that deadbolt, and you hear that final reassuring click, are you truly locking the danger out? Or are you just locking yourself in with it?